Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond BMR. Of course, I am your host, Bigfoot in Michigan. Rob, how's everybody doing this Tuesday night? I have a great show in store lined up. Dennis Carroll joins us tonight. Dennis has been on several times. I love having Dennis back. He's always a wealth of knowledge, and he knows what's going on out there. The cryptid world, the paranormal world, the occult world, you name it. Dennis is well informed, well versed in all those areas. So I'm looking forward to the show. I'm always looking forward in Studio B, Krista from the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast coming on in to join me as my co-host. You can find Krista with the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast Thursdays at 9 in the East, along with Brandy, and Fridays at 8 o'clock in the East. So be sure, if you're new, to subscribe. We talk about everything on this particular show on Tuesday nights. By the way, this show, Bigfoot Michigan Around, the YouTube channel, Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock in the East, Thursday afternoon, 1 o'clock in the East, and Saturday. That's right. Our Saturday show is really gaining some steam, everybody. We've been doing it for 3 months. Saturday at midnight with myself, Krista, Brandy, and Monica. From our paranormal world, Monica Rollins. You can catch Monica Thursday nights at 11. It's another great channel to check out. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to all the channels I just mentioned. Please like, please share, hit the alert bell. The alert bell, you guys, is a key. A lot of people say, Rob, I'm not getting your shows, blah, blah, blah. Well, you got to make sure you're subscribed for one, because sometimes YouTube will take you off, by the way. And turn on that alert bell. You can find us on iHeart Radio, Spreaker, wherever podcasts are found. If you like and want to help support what we do around here, the Super Chat is open. Yes, the Super Chat is a great way to help support the show. And you too can become a BMR pirate. Arr, matey. Join the 100 or so of you that are pirate members. It's a fun thing I do. You guys seem to enjoy it. You get a picture of me with my bandana next to your name in the chat room, should you decide to join. Thank you for that. And also, don't forget Texas Front Porches on Mondays, 8 o'clock to 11. Starts out with Daniel Diva with the Diva Dimensions. So I kind of covered all the shows, and I'm looking forward to getting this one together. But before I do, I got to tell you guys that first of all, if I can find it, I got to waste a little bit of time here. I want to thank everybody for buying this book, Bigfoot Michigan Represents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1. This past Sunday, it's been out a year now, everybody. So thank you to everybody that's bought it. Thanks to everybody that has left a review, because reviews are key in promoting the book. It's all analytics these days. And I will promote the book, but I got to tell you, 2 weeks out in the middle of August, my buddy Jason McLean is just finishing up the artwork for the new book. Bigfoot Michigan Presents True Cryptid Encounters. Book 2 is coming out in about 2 weeks, everybody. So, yeah, I'm excited about that one. Then after that, I'll be putting the encounters to rest for a while, because I've got 2 other projects in the works for you guys coming out in like 25 and 26. So yes, thanks for that. Look forward to everybody for buying that. So with that being said, I'm gonna go get my partner in crime, Krista.
Hey.
Hi, Krista. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good today. It was a great day today. It rained actually most of the day, but it was okay. I like being outdoors in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But, I got this deadline to get this book done, book 2, which I just talked about briefly. I said, well, it's raining. And, in the summer, I don't like to be inside, but it was a great day. And I got a lot of work done because I want to get this thing out, the second book out here. And so I got a lot of work done, thankfully, with that. And so I'm happy to do what I got done today, And so,
I hear you. I worked all day, and then I left, and I come home, and the sky was getting dark here, and we got a heck of a thunderstorm. It's so humid and so hot. We're under heat advisories until Thursday, and it just bursted out a thunderstorm.
Oh, I got to tell you, in the summertime, I hate when it's I work from the house and stuff like that, so I can be outside. I can be doing on the
Mhm.
computer this, that, and the other. And in the summer when it rains, it's just kind of it's a little. I'll say a little depressing because you want to be outside.
Yes.
Because in
Mhm.
Michigan, you know, summer for me, summer's May, June, July. I'm not a big fan of August too much because it gets too hot and humid. But
Right.
mostly the mosquitoes come out. The
Yeah.
flies are all over the place. The wasps are out.
Well, I actually
So it's
was
terrible.
I was sitting outside for, I don't know, went outside like 10 minutes and I got ate up by mosquitoes. So I'm like, nope, I'm going back in. And I don't know how I'm going to handle next week because next week I'm camping all week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be. Whoop.
I'll be spending a whole lot of time in my horse trailer. We've got a horse trailer that's got living quarters in it. And I'll be spending a lot of time in there if the mosquitoes are out.
Well, you know, there's. I can hear myself in the background. I wonder why that is. Hopefully, it goes away. But anyway, yeah. So
I don't hear you twice. I mean, you sound fine.
I think it just went away. It's probably something I don't know. Some glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, again, I love the summer. Don't get me wrong. I am a summer guy because winter's here. Hey, it gets dark. It gets dark at 5, Krista. You know, when I do the 9 o'clock shows, you know,
Yeah.
when the winter rolls, I'm like, man, I got to do a show. I mean, it feels like it's midnight at
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, like I told you, I thought about doing Friday night show at that cemetery, going live down at the cemetery.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
shoot,
yeah.
it's not even dark yet. So I'm like, well, that'll just have to wait until winter.
Yeah. Well,
Well, it's
it's
dark at 7.
well, here it's 9. It's 10 after 9 right now, and it's still light outside, but it's
This
that
year
dust.
too.
It's that kind of. It's that ambiance where it's not
Yep.
dark and it's light, so you can still see what you're doing. I mean,
That's
you
right.
could literally sit outside and hang out
Yeah.
and see somebody, but then we get the campfires rolling around here in end of August and September, which are always cool as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I want to thank everybody for coming on in. And yes, Krista, go ahead.
No, I was just.
And I was about to say, in your backyard, I can see where you probably have a lot. You probably don't hang out too much at the bottom level of your house. Seems like that would just be full of bugs.
There's a lot of mosquitoes here, and honestly, like usually I spray myself, but I wore white pants today to work, and I still have them on, so I didn't want to spray, white pants and take a chance of ruining them.
Yeah, you know,
I didn't.
I don't blame you on that one.
Yeah.
Hello to everybody for coming in. Amy, Trail Ridge Runner, JoJo, Henry, all you guys. Hello to everybody. T-Bone. If I can't get to you, I apologize simply because we got already a lot of people piling up in chat. And we do have, like I said, a great guest. Dr. Dennis Carroll once again joins the show.
Oh, yeah.
And I love when Dennis comes on because we can kick back. And this show is going to go all over the place, but it's always well worth the time. It's always well worth the visit. So enough of that. I'm going to bring up Mr. Dennis.
Hello.
Good evening, Krista. Rob, good to be here.
And listen to that voice.
I was just listening to you talking about mosquitoes.
Yes.
We have mosquitoes around here so big, they've got their own runway at the airport. Okay.
I hear you. They're awful here. Like seriously, I sat out like maybe 10 minutes and I have 2 bites and my ankle is itching.
They love me. Well,
Me too.
bloodsuckers. Yeah.
Me too.
You know, vampire. They're like the mini vampire, right?
Well, people in chat are saying to rub garlic on yourself, and I'm all about that. But I eat a lot of garlic, and they're still liking me.
Doesn't repel them. I think they were raised on garlic or something. Funny we should bring up vampires, and I was just thinking about this today. What's going on with vampires? All of a sudden, they're really hot at them. I mean, you hear more and more about this stuff going on. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
I kind of have noticed that a little bit, Dennis. And what's the latest from what you've come up with on the vampire scene to get the show rolling then?
Well, yeah. Matter of fact, I was telling you earlier, I'm going to be having a show tomorrow night on Hunting the Shadows. With Dacre Stoker, the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker, the guy that wrote Dracula.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very interesting evening, definitely. But I don't know what's going on with the vampire thing. All of a sudden, I'm getting reports left and right. People are being attacked, being approached, and encountering vampires. A lot of these are what they call energy or psychic vampires that people are running into. It's kind of weird. But you know, the thing about the vampire, it is a demonic. Basically, if you're talking about the inhuman variety, it is a demonic thing, okay? But there are so many different types of vampires. Some can be human vampires. Some can be inhuman vampires. And that's the way it goes with a lot of monsters. And I'm an old monster hunter from way back. I mean, I've done this for I don't know how long. But anyway, the interesting thing about all these monsters are not cut and dried like Hollywood would have us believe. And when I was a kid, I was a monster kid. When I was a little kid, I watched nothing but monster movies. You know, that was my favorite thing. Mostly it was Universal monsters, you know, stuff like that. But here's the interesting thing, folks. When I grew up, I found out that monsters were real. That there really are monsters, and most of the time they're us. That's the ironic part of it. Yeah, they come from humans and not from something else.
Yeah.
But you deal with a lot of things like that are supernatural too, and you have that supernatural element.
Yeah, I gotcha. I know you had talked before. I heard you had told a story about you encountering a vampire.
Yeah, actually, I had an encounter with one years ago in a cemetery in Charleston, which was really freaky. I mean, that's the way it goes with the paranormal. Most of the time when you have some type of an encounter like that, you're never expecting it. And it was something I had absolutely caught me completely off guard. I have spent a lot of my life in cemeteries. Okay. I used to teach classes in cemeteries. I have been in cemeteries at night, dawn, darkness, whatever the situation. I've been in a lot of cemeteries. I was in this cemetery, which was in downtown Charleston. And I'll make this a quick short story for you. What I was doing, I was looking actually for one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He was supposed to be buried there. And I was looking around for him, and I did find him eventually. But he had like a little small plaque on it. I would have thought he'd had a big plaque of some sort, but he had a little small badge like on his thing, on his grave. Anyway, I was looking around, and I hear a voice behind me. And I turn around, it's this young girl back there. And she says, "Hey, how you doing?" Or something. She's real nice, friendly. And so I said, "Hey, you know, I'm doing all right. How you doing?" Or something. And I noticed right off she didn't. You get a funky feeling sometimes when you see something. I guess you get a weird kind of feeling. That's the first thing that there was something not right here, you know, about it. And she put her hand out, said, "Hey, I think she said her name was Claire or something." Okay. Yeah, it's been a long time ago, I don't remember. But anyway, I shook her hand, and as soon as I did, I'm not going to say I got an electric shock out of it, okay? But it was a very bad vibe, like. And her hand, to tell you the truth, and I have touched a lot of dead bodies in my time. I used to be in law enforcement. It was like shaking hands with a dead person.
Wow.
I mean, it was cold, and this was on a day that was sort of an Indian summer day. It was in the fall, and it was about like maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It was going close to dark, but not dark yet. You know, it was still light. The sun was still shining a little bit. She shook my hand, and I'm saying, "Oh, this is, you know, is there something wrong with her? She got some kind of a body temperature thing going on." I wasn't even thinking about her, nothing like that, you know.
What was your appearance? Was she like pale white, like a vampire shows himself to be? Or okay.
She had sort of a translucent kind of a look to her. It wasn't a pale, like, you know, pale that you're sick, pale, or
that
you don't get a lot of sunlight or something. But it was just sort of almost like, I'm going to say, a dark pale like to it, a darkness that was to it, that it was translucent, almost like not see-through, but that kind of feeling about it. But she was a very pretty girl. She had long dark brown hair, like, And what struck me as strange, the other thing that kind of attracted me, I noticed usually as a police officer, I was trained to observe everything. You got to see everything when you're looking at something. Well, I noticed her clothes didn't seem right. She was sort of dressed in half modern and half very kind of old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. And she had on maybe like a long skirt, but it wasn't very long, you know. But it just didn't appear to be real ultra modern like some young girls would wear. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yes.
That's what struck me as strange. And when she said my name's Splash, she said, "Do you stay out in the cemetery a lot or something? Do you like to stay in cemeteries?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I spend a lot of time in cemeteries. They're nice, peaceful place." She said, "I live in cemeteries." I said, "I live in a cemetery." And I said, "Well, that's interesting."
Right.
And
lives in a cemetery.
Yeah, that's kind of a sign there right off the bat. Something.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And well, she said, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, "Are you interested in graves and rubbings?" And I thought she might have been doing grave rubbings. That was a big hobby then, you know. And she said, "No, I live." She said, "This is practically my home. You see," she said, "I'm a vampire."
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, really?" You know. And here's another thing I picked up on. Standing kind of close to her, I felt no warmth at all, like you do feel with a human. You know, when you're dressing somebody, you can feel that.
Yeah.
You know, there was nothing there. You know what I'm saying? And that's what kind of struck me. Thinking about it later, I didn't really pay a lot of attention then, but I remembered that very distinctly later, that there was no feeling there like that.
Right.
And well, I just thought, here's what I thought. I said she's in some of these vampire cult societies, you know. And that's why I asked her. I said, "Oh, are you a member of a vampire society?" Because they have them in every large city. Okay, they're everywhere. And I knew about them. And she said, no, I'm a real vampire. And I'm like 270 something years old. And I said, "Well, that's very interesting." You know? That's very. I'm getting dealing with somebody that's not got all their marbles or what.
Yeah. Well, really quick, I'm sorry if I didn't hear it. I know Chris had something to comment. Was this during nighttime you seen this vampire, or was it during the day?
This was during the day, and that was
okay. So she was a day walker. Okay, go ahead.
Well, that's what's the next thing I asked her. I said, "Well, look," I said, "if you're a vampire, what are you doing out in daytime? Aren't you supposed to be like, you know, not coming out in the day?" She said, "Oh no, we can come out in daytime, but it's like a dark, cloudy day like today. We can come out." And I found out later during research deeper that I got into, supposedly they can walk by day, but they don't have as much power, and they're not as strong. Their strength is not as high in daytime more than it is at night, because these are nocturnal creatures that you're talking about here. So anyway,
let me ask you real quick. Real quick.
She told me. Yeah, go ahead.
What actually was going through your mind at that time? Did you really believe she was a true vampire? Or did you think she was on something? Or what was going through your head? Like, is this lady crazy?
Well, I'll tell you, in my entire career, I've always took things kind of with a skeptical eye. One eye skeptic, okay? The other eye wants to believe. That's just me, okay? And I'm going, you know, is she like, you know, not got all her marbles here, or what's going on? And but I was picking up, like I say, some bad vibes here that didn't feel right, and that's what got me interested. So I'm talking to her, and I say, you know, "Well, that's very interesting." And I said, I was going to ask her another question, and I kind of looked down to look at something or get something or something. I think it might have been my tripod. I had a camera tripod with me, and I went to pick it up and turn around, and she is gone.
Wow.
Completely gone. And I said, "Oh, wait a minute. That's just not possible, because there was nowhere she could have went. I could see through the whole cemetery." And I started looking around. Is she hiding? I thought she might be hiding behind one of the big tombstones or something. I started looking for her. I started walking around looking for her, and nothing. She is completely gone. And here's the icing on the cake. I'm sitting there thinking, puzzled about this. What the heck is this? You know, how could she have got gone? I look up, and through the trees into the right, and I see the biggest bat I have ever seen in my, and this is in daytime now. Biggest bat I've ever seen. I'm gonna say it was as big, not quite maybe the size of a bald eagle, but it was big.
Wow.
I have never ever seen. I know there are bats like that in the world, but not in that region. Does not have bats like that. And I'm going, oh, there's no way nobody's ever gonna believe this. Yeah, watching that go and thinking about it later and finding out more research, because at that point in time, and this was many, many years ago, I had not done a whole lot of research on vampires. Okay. And since then, I've done some vampire hunting since then. But finding out some things and all that leads to believe she may have been the real deal.
Wow. Wow. Why do you think that she showed herself to you and she told you this?
Well, here's the interesting little tidbit for the end of this story. Okay. I went looking around in that cemetery. I went back the next day hoping I might see her again, same time, but never saw her again. But I got to looking around and I remember finding a grave that had her name on it.
Oh man, no way.
And it was about like maybe 200 some odd years old. And I'm going, but it was, I never got her whole name. I just remember it was something like Claire. It was a double name. So like Claire Ann or Claire something. And I did find a grave with that on it.
That, I was thinking that in my head. I was waiting. I feel Krista would probably want to answer that. Thank you, Denise. Thanks to Walter. Thanks to Denise. And thanks for T-Bone already for the super chats. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much. So Krista kind of stole my thunder. That's okay. Krista and I think alike. Well, we think alike. It's okay. But I was going to ask you, though, Dennis, you talked about her clothing that she was wearing. Wasn't like a modern, regular girl. What time, if you could take a guess, speculate, what era do you think her wardrobe or her style of dress was? Could you date it back a century, or maybe it was like 80s or maybe an 80s look? It was something.
I don't know if it was antique. I don't think it was antique, like maybe out of the Victorian era.
Okay.
But it looked like probably, it just struck me as something like out of the 50s or 60s.
Okay.
That old in that era maybe.
Okay.
Some of it, and like I say, some of her ensemble, she had I remember like a little vest like on. And that looked kind of modern, at that time, something that, the ladies were wearing at that time. But the skirt itself looked like something out of the 50s, 60s or something like that. It looked kind of that old. Yeah. Like
a Victorian goth, Fisher says. Something like that.
It kind of bordered on that probably. I know I'm not real big on women's fashions, but it kind of struck me that way, But the oddest thing of all was just the vibes that I got from, especially touching her hand. And I'm gonna say this: I don't think she was an energy vampire. I think she was a regular type of an inhuman type vampire.
Yeah,
I think she was the living dead. Put it that way. There are different types of vampires. Some of them are living human beings, and some of them are not living human beings. Some of them are demonic. They can be either a demonically reanimated corpse, or they can be a demonic spirit that's putting forth that image of someone, or a human, trying to look like a human.
Which could have been what you saw. Is that the description? Is that how you categorize your encounter?
I think she was more like perhaps a demonically reanimated corpse. Vampire, put it that way. She was not a living vampire. Now, living vampires are the people in those vampire societies. They get their teeth fixed. They like to sit around. Like if you and I, Krista and Rob, are in a vampire society, we would probably just drink each other's blood because we keep it in the society. We don't go outside. That way we know who we are. We know our friends, and we trade blood that way. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the way they do. They do that.
Okay. And you know the modern day, I guess the living vampires. I know a couple. They were on a paranormal team that I was on, and they do the vampire balls. They go to New Orleans. They've got the fake teeth. You know, the whole setups, and
it's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's a lifestyle for them. But they don't drink blood. They're not the blood drinkers. There's different kinds or something they explained to me. I don't know.
Well, a lot of people get into it through the goth stuff. You know, the goth people that move into that and become much more serious. Goth is goth, and it's just dressing and kind of doing some funky stuff. You know, a lot of young people do that. But then you kind of move out of that into more serious territory, and that's when you get into the vampire cults. And the vampire cults are much more dangerous than just some vampire societies, because they're like a social club, okay? But then when you get into the cults, you're getting into very dangerous territory. You're getting into vampire satanic cults that actually drink other people's blood. They live off of the essence of other people. They consume human flesh, okay? We're talking about cannibal stuff here, okay?
Right.
They actually will feed off of us in those three ways: either the life essence of the soul, energy, blood, or flesh, or all three.
I would like to continue this. I got to ask you more back on your encounter really quick. And I had a question, but also somebody in chat brought up a pretty interesting, here it was. Henry asked, why wouldn't she make her run at you at their close? I guess Henry's asking, why do you think that this vampire didn't make you part of the undead, or do what the typical vampire that we see in every movie would do, is basically, kill you or bite you or whatever terminology you want to use.
Well, that's sort of the Hollywood perception. We gotta discount that, because some of it's based on true folklore.
Okay.
But a lot of it's not. A lot of it's made up by script writers. Okay. But there are, having gone into extensive research on vampires and werewolves, and they do exist. It's just not in the way that Hollywood has portrayed them many times. But they are out there. I think without a doubt they walk among us. And here's the interesting part of it all. Some of these things can walk in daytime with us, be our neighbors, and we don't even know it, until, we find out the wrong way or ever how that may go. But the interesting thing about some of this stuff is that vampires that are demonic are very, very dangerous in that aspect, because you can become a vampire also as a human being through dark witchcraft. Okay. It is a higher echelon. The higher up the ladder you go, the more demonic power you obtain. You can become a werewolf, you can become a vampire, you can change into a tiger, or you can change into a Black Panther. The list goes up and up, but each rung of the ladder requires more and more horrific things that you have to do in order to obtain this power. I won't go into that tonight because it's very bad stuff. But the more higher up the ladder you go, the more shape-shifting you can do. And shape-shifting, just like with the werewolf and the vampire, and vampires are shape-shifters too, okay? They can change into other things like bats. They can change into wolves. They can change themselves into a mist. They can do different things. That is the demonic vampire, okay? Because that's what they're able to do as demonic spirits. And I have run into many vampire spirits in a lot of my cases. I had one that was even attached with a voodoo case that I had. A very weird case. Vampire spirits can attach to you and drain you out of life. They can drain the life out of you, eventually destroying you. That's how dangerous vampire spirits can be. So they just don't come and bite you in the neck and suck your blood. They can also attack you in different ways, but they can attack you spiritually, because they are spiritual entities. That's the way supernatural spiritual entities work. Now take, for instance, the werewolf. The werewolf is What's so bad about it? And a lot of people, you think about when you think of the werewolf, you think of the Howling movie and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That is not what the traditional werewolf looks like.
Right.
It runs on all fours. It looks like a big, giant, gosh, ugly monster wolf. That's what it looks like. And it runs on all fours. It can stand up on its hind legs if it wants to.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what it usually does. Not like it's very much like a bear. I've seen bears out in the forest walk around as well and good as you and I can on two legs. But they don't like to do that. I think it's uncomfortable for them. They're not designed to do that. Now, the werewolf, the true werewolf, looks like that, but it is a psychotic apex killer. It will not stop till it destroys you. That's what its intent is. And the most dangerous aspect of the werewolf is the fact that it has a human brain. It still has the mind of a man or woman, as the case may be. That's what it's got. That makes it so far much more dangerous than, say, Dogman. I've had people ask me a question, say, how would you tell the difference of a Dogman attack and a werewolf attack? If I walked up and I've trained myself like a forensics, like I look at something like that as a crime scene in a way, okay? I let it talk to me. That's the way to investigate. I don't care if it's ghosts, whatever the situation is. Look upon it as a crime scene. Let that area talk to you and tell you the story there, okay? And if I walked up on something like that, and you're just like some people have been mauled to death, I could say pretty much that's probably a Dogman. But if I find that there's just bits and pieces and parts of the human body on this side over here, that's a werewolf. The werewolf is psychotic in the way killer that does the way it does. It is horrific in the way it does these things. Well, and here's the bad thing. Listen to this.
Yes.
Dogman might cut you a break. You may walk away from Dogman, but I guarantee you will not walk away from a werewolf. Not very easily, because it is fixated like a serial killer. It is fixated on its target, and it will not stop till it eliminates that target.
Well, I got to ask you this, and I want to continue on this. I love this. I love this show already. It's already 36 minutes has gone by. It's like, wow, where'd time go? You're familiar with LBL, Land Between the Lakes, correct, Dennis? Are you familiar with that story, the Land Between the Lakes?
Oh, yeah. Very much.
Okay, I know that's a dumb question for you, but I'm just throwing it out there. It makes me wonder, because everyone says it's a Dogman that did the mauling and attacking of that family and the hunter, the guy that was found in the bow and arrow guy. So, Dennis, from what you're telling me, that perhaps everybody that yells Dogman at the LBL, maybe they should be yelling werewolf.
I think if that took place the way it said to have happened, if it took place the way, and I have some questions about it. Okay. Some of it does not seem right to me in some ways, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that part of me. But I would say that looks more like the work of a Dogman, if it were to be something like that, more so than a werewolf in that respect. The werewolf, like I said, well, most of the time, here's the interesting thing. You got to remember this. Most of the time, the werewolf will not only kill you, he will also devour you.
Okay.
That's scary.
So you're not going to come back as a werewolf if you get bitten, because chances are 90% of your body is going to be in his stomach.
Yeah, a lot of it. A good deal of it will be, definitely.
And trust me, I'm not making fun. It's just, very enlightening.
It would be kind of like fishing for alligators in Florida when people go missing. Yeah.
Man. So...
well, here's the thing about it, like between the vampires and werewolves, we are down the food chain for them. Okay? They are preying on us, that's what we talked about before, a lot of these missing person cases and all that. Something is hunting the human race, whether it be reptilians, whatever the situation. I believe that reptilians are basically really actually demons. Okay, I won't get into that tonight. That's a show for another time. But I think that's part of it, and they are also feeding off of us. Humans are on the menu here. Okay,
right. We're definitely not atop the food chain in this universe at all.
no, we're further down the line, definitely, and especially when it comes to vampires, because vampires could not truly exist without us. In that way, I think they make us survive on rats and dogs, cats, maybe. And there have been many instances where these very same pets go missing for certain reasons like that. They can exist on lower forms of life, but it's not the same thing for them. I'm gonna say this: there's something in human blood that they need. It's almost like a drug, a narcotic. They are drawn to it. They have to have it. And once they taste it, once they're on a diet of it, it's like going from a Cadillac to a Volkswagen. There's a big difference there.
So do you think that different blood types, like they prefer a different blood type over another, like A over O, or,
Well, I don't think it's just limited to the blood type more than it is the age of that blood. There's a difference. I think the blood that has that adrenaline flow in it, the young, and they always talk about virgin blood. The young blood, there's a certain quality to it. It is sort of the higher echelon of blood.
Sure.
That attracts them to that, especially that fear and that adrenaline in that blood. That they themselves are the cause of that too. Probably, usually, most of the time. They feed off of that. That makes it's like blood on steroids for them. That's what it basically is.
Gotcha. Wow.
So a little early on, we're talking about the shape shifting. So in your mind, Dennis, from your experience, and you've studied, Dennis Carroll, everybody has been doing this for many years, all subjects of everything that we are into. That's why I love having Dennis on the show. So in your mind, from what I've gathered, a shapeshifter is not a human that takes the form of an animal, a beast, a creature, or whatever. It's a spirit form, correct?
In a way, yeah. Because shape-shifting is a supernatural power. You might say it's not like a superpower in a way. But humans can obtain it. Look at the skinwalker. Look at the werewolf. Look at the witch, the bruja, the brujos. They can change form. They can shapeshift, but they have to do terrible things. Like I said, it comes with to hook up in that to that demonic power. To be able to do this, you have to murder your own siblings. You have to spill your own blood. You have to do terrible, torturous, horrible things to obtain this stuff. And the more you do, the more you give yourself over to the darkness, the more power it gives you, but it comes with a terrible price. And it is, let me say this spiritual darkness is the most addictive thing on this planet. It is highly more addictive than cocaine, meth, fentanyl, whatever. Nothing can compare to it, because once this power takes hold of you and becomes part of you, it demands more and more and more and more, just like a narcotic, just like being, addicted to it. It's what it is. It is an addiction, but it's a spiritual addiction. That's far worse than physical addiction.
Maybe that would attest to some of, hey, we all know we do not live in a perfect world. We all know there are dark, bad people in the world, right? Do you think that, according to what you're saying, which I do happen to agree with, and I think are awesome, valid points, do you think that oftentimes murder with serial killers or all these sadistic people, once they get a taste of the dark side, that, like you say, there's, for many people, not most, many people, that there's no turning back? Because for you to equate that to some of these narcotic drugs that unfortunately a lot of people are susceptible to, that's a powerful drug in itself, which might attribute to a lot of what's happening in the world.
Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. The more power you get, the more you want. And that's the addictive part of it. And you will do anything to get that power. You know, you look at a lot of times, I know we all have seen people like that, politicians, movie stars, or whatever the situation, sports figures. We look at these people and say, where did they get all that money at? Well, all of a sudden, where did they get this prestige at that they've got, this celebrity that they have? Where did this come from? A lot of times, there may be a bad answer for that. They may be getting it the wrong way. They may be making deals, signing dark contracts, doing shadow work. You know, look at a lot of the pop stars that are out there today, and I'm not going to name any names, but they're not just performing on the stage anymore. They're doing rituals. And if you're a part of that ritual out in the audience, you're part of that. Whether you know it or not, you're partaking in it. And they're using you for that too. Because you got to remember one thing. A lot of these dark witchcraft things and all that they do, the reason they have covens, and right where I'm sitting tonight, just in this rather small town I live in, there are 3 operating covens, 2 voodoo sects, and a Santeria that I know about.
Wow, that's scary.
That's just here. That's just here, okay? This is a little small. Could you imagine what's in Chicago? Okay. So anyway, what I'm going to say is this. The more people they get in these rituals, you got to remember, this raises their power. You understand? The more participants they get, that's what they want. They want to raise this cone of power, and they can use it to cast spells, hexes, curses, whatever it is they want to do. Or obtain power, money, fame, whatever they're out for. And here's the interesting thing. I'm writing a book about this, by the way. It's called The God Game. Here's the interesting thing about this. What good is all the money, power, and glory in this world going to do you if you got to die one day and leave it behind? They are questing for the one thing that is the icing on this cake, this demonic cake, and that is immortality. And they will stop at nothing to get this immortality, whether they use cloning, robotics, generic type stuff, whatever the situation is. They're not going to stop until they obtain this immortality. Then they will be like gods upon this planet.
Wow. That's a scary thought.
Dennis, always fascinating when you come on the show. AI, do you think AI is evil? Or okay, nothing is evil inherently when it starts out, but AI is probably something that's used for evil currently.
Exactly. Whatever the tool may be, you can take a hammer and build a house, or you can put somebody's skull in with it and commit murder. Whatever it is, it depends on what the intention of the use behind it is. AI would be a wonderful thing. Absolutely wonderful thing if it is used correctly. But do you think it will be used correctly? I don't. I'm kind of pessimistic about that. I don't see it being done that way because I know human beings.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the bad thing about it, and I talk about this in that book. There is a terrible, dark, human demonic coalition in this world. Okay. And certain human beings are selling us out because they're getting a trade back on it. Okay, they're getting kickback from the demonic. They don't care what they do to get what they want to do. That's it. And that includes using AI to even download you in the mainframe of a robot if necessary, or clone you if necessary. Whatever the situation is, that's what they're looking into because, like I said, they got to have that immortality. That will make them the gods that they want to be.
Do you think they were getting close just to immortality?
I think so. And I think AI will help them accomplish that because with that type of artificial intelligence, we can download Rob into a robot and you will live forever.
Yeah, but I'm not going to have a soul, right?
But here's the thing about it, Rob, Krista. If somebody comes to you tomorrow night and says, hey, take my hand and I can make you a god, You will live forever, and you'll have everything you absolutely want. How many people would turn down that proposition? Think about it. It might be hard to do if you think about it, but look what the price will be, and what
Right.
you may have to pay for it.
Not a
That's
good one.
a lot of people don't consider that. I saw a film. I think he was a basketball player. I can't be for sure. The guy was going to sign something like $1 million contract, and I have never seen such indecision on somebody. He was like almost scared to do it. Now, why would you be afraid of something like that unless it had a terrible price behind it? And you want to do that. You don't know what's going on out there with a lot of this dark shadow work and contracts. But I think it is still just as prevalent as it was in medieval times. People are still selling their soul for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Boy, I tell you, because that's a great question. My intentions would be good, but it's like if somebody posed me that question and I knew that I could live it forever, there's a part of me that wants to see what the world would be like in 2300. A part of me would like to see when the world ends, but then a part of me is like, do I really want to see all that?
Exactly. I would turn it down myself.
I want to see my nieces and nephews that are a lot younger than me die, and their kids die, and this and that.
Nope.
That would be there is a price that you would pay simply from the humanistic standpoint of seeing everybody you ever loved die.
Right.
And before you know it, you're just going to be alone in the world with nobody.
It would be a curse and more than a blessing in that respect, And I did a show just recently on Saint Germain, and we were talking about if you found the Philosopher's Stone and you could live forever, would you want to? Because everybody you would ever love, they would grow old and die around you, and you'd have to watch it happen, and nothing you could do to stop it, in that respect, unless you gave them part of the Philosopher's Stone. But then you would be dooming them. It's kind of like the bite of the vampire. Okay, a vampire can turn you. You could be either the victim or he can turn you, and you have to drink the blood of the vampire in order to do that. But if they turn you, it's just as bad as killing you outright. Or maybe worse, because they're condemning you to a living death. And that's what immortality would be in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really quickly again, back on the fascinating story about you meeting that vampire. Did you get the sense, if I missed it, I apologize. You didn't get the sense that it was evil. You just felt it was cold. You could tell it was from a different time, but you did not get the sense that this entity wanted to possess or take over you, correct?
No, I didn't there was no power play there. Now most of the time, vampires will do that power play thing on you, or that mesmerizing kind to get you under their power kind of thing. That's definitely a demonic vampire. But also psychic vampires can do the same thing by draining and forming a psychic connection with you. That's very important, and I tell this to people that's listening out there now. Be careful who touches you. Be careful what you take from other people. You may be getting the bad. You may be getting something you don't want, because once these people touch you or give you something, if I were to hand you something tonight, Rob, and say, "Here, take this, Rob, it's yours," you take it. It does belong to you. Okay, whatever it may be, whether it's a curse or whatever the situation. That's why your mama and dad used to say, "Don't take anything from strangers." That was why they told you that. You get certain things given to you; they belong to you from then on.
I always thought it was because it was going to be poison candy.
The only way oh yeah, definitely. And the only way you can get rid of the curse is to pass it on to someone else. That's not good either, but that's what you have to do in order to free yourself. You have to condemn somebody else with it.
So let me ask you this, Dennis, really quickly. Again, I don't like to belabor any points when I have a show, but you probably heard the story that I picked up some haunted objects throughout my life, right? When I was married, and brought them home. I bought them throughout different antique shops in Michigan and Chicago and Indiana throughout in a 2-year period. And all of a sudden found out that, a lot of them had evil spirits were attached to these things, which in the event, I was seeing shadow people with the wife. But I had bought those, but they were at a store. So you suggesting that when I picked up these things and bought them, because I maybe made a transaction that I bought the curse, and I invited these evil entities into the home. Is that kind of the same thing?
Well, usually, if you do acquire a curse that way, you can break it. There are ways to break it, but most of the time, the quick way was to hand it on to somebody else. That's the way, which is not good. I would not advise that.
Yeah,
I would
no,
say
I
break
wouldn't.
it. Yeah, definitely. You don't want to do that to somebody else because it was done to you. But
Right.
I wouldn't. But some people wouldn't hesitate to do it, and that's why you have to be very careful about bringing stuff into your life. Okay, whatever it may be. If you go to the supermarket, you know what you're kind of buying there. Okay,
Right.
but certain things that are brought into our lives may be brought in there for a reason. Certain people who come into our lives may come in for a certain reason. They're almost like agents of evil, you might say. That sometimes they're sent after you for certain reasons. There are all kinds of what we used to call spirit and demon traps around us. If we're not careful, we can step into them, and then we got a problem. That's what I tell a lot of people who do paranormal investigations. It is so very, very explicitly important that you protect yourself going
Mhm.
in and out of these situations because things can attach to you. You can pick these things up and take them back home and give them to your family. You don't want to do that. You know, you do not want that happening. So you must protect yourself at all times. Let me tell you this. I used to carry 2 vials of salt, blessed salt with me. Okay. I always do. That's what I always pack in my equipment. I have them on my body during investigations because you never know when you need to cast that salt circle around you for protection. When you run into certain malevolent spirits, that are out there, especially these dark demonic spirits you can run into. I have actually had to take people out of paranormal investigations and put them in that circle just to get the demons off of them. They would be attacking them so badly. I had a guy one time, he told me, he looked at me, I could tell he was in bad trouble. He said, I got to get out of here. I can't even think straight anymore. And I knew what they were doing to the guy. I said, come on, take you outside, away from this situation. I put him in that salt circle. He's okay in a little bit. They were attacking him so violently, mentally, and he
Yeah.
couldn't take it. And you will run into those problems sometimes in certain situations. And I'll say this, okay? You talk about spending a lot of time in cemeteries. Most of the time, what you're going to run into in cemeteries are not spirits of the dead. The dead don't usually hang around their bodies that long. It's demonic spirits. They love places of the dead,
Yep.
places of trauma, death, suffering, pain, whatever the situation, they love that. And that's where you will encounter them more
Yeah,
than
I
anything
would think
else. The
that's where you
morgue will
come
be the one
across.
place you're dealing with.
Yeah, I would think that's true. Demons, ghouls, you know, dogmen hang out at cemeteries, from what I heard. Well, from what I've heard, from what I've been told by several people, actually.
Well, I think, Rob, that some cryptids out there, and I've seen evidence of this, and I've done some shows on it. I think some of them may be conjured up.
Hmm.
I think dogmen sometimes may be conjured up by certain forces. Um, there are, like I said before, like I said earlier in the show, there are certain plateaus of dark magic you reach. You can become a Black Panther. You can become a bear. You can, whatever the situation, you could also conjure up something like Dogman or even Bigfoot. You could conjure
Hmm.
up something. I'm not saying it's the original thing here, okay? I'm saying it could
Right.
be something demonically that looks like that or acts like that. You can bring that forth out of the shadows.
Hmm. It's scary stuff. Honestly, everything you said, I agree with you. I've studied some demonology myself, and I mean, that's everything you learn. Wholeheartedly
I've,
agree with you.
had a lot of, I've had a lot of people. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, "Why was why was my Bigfoot encounter so demonic? You know, why did I feel like when I ran into Bigfoot, it was demonic? You know, a lot of people have asked me, and I said, why? Because it probably was. I mean, you pick up on that, definitely. You know, we should listen to ourselves a lot of times and understand what our bodies and our spirits are trying to tell us. It's like an early warning.
Yeah.
You know, just like it was with that girl in the cemetery that I met and some other things that I run into. There's an early warning system. Everything walking around out there, it looks human. It's not necessarily human.
No, I agree with you. Goes. You have several questions. Do you mind answering a couple questions here?
No, sure.
First one, Ron Forrest Jr. asked, is whistling bad in the woods? I've heard things about whistling myself in the woods.
Yeah, whistling's not a good idea because whistling sort of calls for things. You're communicating with it. You're kind of throwing a lifeline out there, however you want to put it. You're kind of making the connection that you might not want to make a connection with. That's like I tell a lot of people that supposedly communicate with spirits. Be careful, very, very, very careful what you're communicating with or what you're talking to or what you're contacting because you really, really, really don't know what's on that other side.
It just says World Bigfoot Central says, how do they know it was a Bigfoot, not a demon? It's true. I agree.
It depends on how it acts. If it's more of a natural kind of a situation, you might be thinking along the lines that would be the real actual Bigfoot. I've seen Bigfoot. I know he exists. I've made eye contact with the guy. I was very close to it. I know they do exist, but I'm saying that everything you see a lot of times is not what it appears to be. You can be fooled. But if something is demonic, you will probably feel that. You know what I'm saying? You'll probably feel that deep down inside. That like an early warning system.
Yeah, you know, I've done a couple demonic cases, and you know, I tell everybody demons are very real. They are far and few between, you know, when you do private cases, but they are out there. And pay attention to how your body reacts, because for me, when it is a true, actual demonic entity, I get dizzy and feel like I'm going to pass out. And that is how I know that, okay, this is not good.
The more research you do, the longer you stay in this, the better it becomes. I mean,
you know,
the more sensitive you become to it. And
I was going to ask you that, Dennis, really quick, but really quickly here. I like to do this as part of the show here. T-Bone, thank you for the awesome super chat. Thank you so much. Walter, somebody new. Walter, I'm sorry if I screw up your name. Kokabinski, a Polish guy. I'm part Polish, Walt. Super chat. Thank you, Denise. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for everybody for your support and love. You, of course, can become a BMR pirate. Join today. You get a picture of me, my bandana next to your name in chat. Thank you ever so much for showing up tonight. If you're new, please subscribe to Bigfoot Mr. Rob on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Texas Front Porch, and of course, Hunting the Shadows with Dr. Dennis Carroll. And Dennis, you're on, I believe you have, you're on 3 times a night, aren't you? Why don't you tell the folks about where we can find you? Then I do have a question regarding what we all do here really quick.
I'm sorry, I did not catch that last thing you said. What?
Why don't you tell everybody really quickly?
My sound went out.
Yeah, well, you're fine. You got that new equipment over there. I get it. You're on. You have your podcast is Hunting the Shadows. You do a couple other things. Why don't we tell the people here at this portion of the show where they can find you and what you got going on, and then I have a question, a follow up with something.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, on Monday nights at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my good friend Gerald Fountain and I, we do the Road Less Traveled. We sort of take the matter of fact, last week we did Shrunken Heads and Headhunters, so we kind of do some interesting offbeat subjects with that. And Wednesday nights at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do the typical Hunting the Shadows. And like I said, this Wednesday, I'll be talking with Mr. Dacre Stoker. And then Friday nights at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Paranormal Point of View. I do a lot of book reviews and stuff like that on them.
I must tell you, and everybody, please subscribe to Dennis's channel because he's got great stuff. If you like this show, go check out Dennis because it continues on from here. If I don't want you to give away too much because Mr. Stoker, that's a distant relative of Bram Stoker, correct? That you're having on the show?
Yeah, he's the great grand nephew, I think, of Bram Stoker.
Wow, that'll be everybody tune into
well, he's written a book. As a matter of fact, I have both his books here. One where he actually does the sequel to Dracula, and then the pre-sequel to Dracula. The guy's he's a best-selling author.
Wow,
mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome.
I've got to say, I'm a little bit jealous. Bram's,
the same thing.
You know, come on, that's to be I'm tuning into that. If not, I'll watch the replay. I am subscribed, so I do catch all your shows because they are fascinating, and you're always a wealth of knowledge on all these subjects. So everybody, definitely subscribe to Dr. Dennis Carroll, Hunting the Shadows, 3 nights a week, 9 o'clock. It's always at 9 throughout the week. And I wanted to ask you, because I often think about this, especially in the last 3 years, people like myself, Krista, Brandy, Tex, yourself, Dennis, and all these people that are, whether you're a show host, a researcher, a novelist, author, I find that I get so immersed in all these topics that you think that sometimes it takes us maybe in a place we don't want to be, or maybe that we can actually conjure up some of these things without knowing about it. Certainly we're not evil people, we're not dark people, but a lot of the subjects we get into, some are lighthearted. I get it. You know, I don't think Bigfoot's something evil, but Dogman, on the other hand, I think there's a lot of connections with the dark side. Do you think that sometimes we can bring this upon ourselves?
Well, when I got into this, I guess 55 plus years now that I've been involved in this. When I first entered into investigative research, I went to the experts to find out how it's done, and that was usually law enforcement, insurance people, and stuff like that. How they investigate, how they do things. You always go to the professionals. Okay, that's the way to do it. And I began to train myself along those lines. So, like I said earlier, I look at it like forensics, sort of like a crime scene.
Mm-hmm.
So, part of me being law enforcement for a while, but you've got to do it that way. You've got to maintain a scholarly outlook on this stuff, and you've got to sort of draw a line in your life and say, hey, you know, this stays on that side of the line, okay, and that's how I deal with it. It's just like being an EMT or something. If you come up on a horribly bad accident, you can't stand there and say, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" You're not helping anybody. That's not being professional in the way you're looking at it. In order to help people or to obtain knowledge or to be functional in this world, you have to be professional to a certain extent. You got to draw that line and say, I'm not going to let it spill over into, you know, I've had people ask me this question. Okay. So that since you know so much about the paranormal, the occult, witchcraft, and all the satanic cults and all this stuff, Dennis, were you ever tempted to practice it or to try it? No, I never did, because I kept it as a scholarly point of view. As a scholar would learn to understand it and try to assimilate that knowledge on it, but not use it. I don't use it that way. You know what I'm saying? But some people don't stop at that. See, they cross that line and they become intrigued by it. And that's when it gets very dangerous for those people. Here's what I tell a lot of people. And I'll tell you this, Chris. I'll tell you this, Rob. The more you look into the paranormal, the more likely it is to look back at you, and the more it is to affect you. Yeah. So from time to time, we all need to step away from it once in a while. And I'm not saying for good, but I just say, take a break. Yeah. And do something else. Build a ship in a bottle, whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
and put it down for a while and leave it and then come back to it. That's fine.
Yep.
You will come back to it, and you will come back with a fresher perspective on it many times, because
Yeah.
you get too deep into anything, whatever it may be, it will kind of screw with your mind. Okay. So you got to, like I say, you got to draw a line and say, hey, it's not going to cross this line. I'm going to keep it right where I want it. You will be a much better person for that if you take it that way.
Wholeheartedly agree.
No, I do agree, and I think you bring up a key point. Is it's a professionalism that we do, that we try to carry, and just have to remember it's part of what we do on a day to day. I'm fascinated, and I bring this up really because of I like watching and following certain FBI profilers. And I know it's common knowledge for a lot of people, a lot of folks that are in law enforcement, particularly the detectives that are in the homicide department or the sex crimes unit, or as a profiler in FBI, that a lot of these, if we just talk about the profilers in FBI, they interview these serial killers, these very bad people, or if they're on an investigation trying to find and solve a murder case. Oftentimes, Dennis, you hear them talk about, especially the ones that are seasoned, of lots of years of experience, they tried to get into their mind and they try to act and think like them. Now, when I say act, certainly not come out and commit a crime, but they try to get into literally their, I don't want to say their soul, but into their mind. And a lot of these famous profilers have been driven to alcoholism, drug abuse, because they get broken down because it gets to be too much for them. And other ones can handle it and they move forward. They're very successful. So I guess I'm kind of correlating that to people that are out in the field that are researching the demonic. There are people that research that and things. So I can see where if you don't take a step back and realize, hey, this is this side of the plane that I'm staying on, it takes a lot of grit, I think, to stay on the one side when you get that deep into some of these topics.
I have, Rob, I've actually been in situations where I have people have handed me cursed or haunted objects that I would not take them without gloves. I mean, you got to be very careful how you handle a lot of these things. Okay. And I have worked with FBI. I have worked with CIA agents. I have known some of them. I have also known some Secret Service. I work with most all branches of law enforcement. They each take a different tact with the way they look at it. Okay, you have to remember that. But they all overall agree on a lot of things. When it comes to serial killers and stuff like that, you got to crawl into those people's minds, and that's a dark, dark, dirty place to go. Okay, but you got to do that in order to understand how they think or how they see through their eyes, you might say. Even writers have to do that. A good writer can do that and experience things through other people and record it that way. You have to do it, but you like I say, you got to reach that point where you say, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to let it get to me that way. You know what I'm saying? And you like you say, you've got to draw that invisible line and keep it on that other side for your own survival, for your own well-being. If you don't, you can become too emotionally involved, too mentally involved, too emotionally involved, too physically involved. It'll start taking a toll on you physically. You can also become too spiritually involved as well. We must remember those 4 avenues. That's the way the demonic, by the way, attacks you, you know, and you got to guard those 4 gates to your soul very closely. Wherever, I don't care if you're a paranormal investigator, if you're a policeman, whatever the situation is, you still got to watch over, because those 4 things make you. They make you a living soul, okay? And if one of those areas, just one, becomes compromised, you're in big trouble. Because you got to be very careful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really scary stuff when you sit down and you think about it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is, Dennis, because sometimes I think about what I do now, which I'm into, and sometimes I have to take a step back myself. Krista, you know this. I think a lot of the nightmares I have is because I get too involved with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm that person, but it's because I try to do the best I can when I put on a show or write a book or do this or the other, right? So I try to be informed when I come on a show so I don't look like a dummy when I'm talking, right?
Right.
But you have to take that deep dive. But it's just like I could never study a chemistry book and learn that because I stink at math, right? So we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I think it's a point where you have to realize what they are. And your weakness, you have to make sure you know that what your weakness is, so you don't fall to the dark side. I would think,
right?
Because your enemy knows, Rob. It knows you better than you know yourself in some ways. Your enemy's out there, and you have certain enemies that are looking to take advantage of those situations. Like I said earlier about letting things into your life that you definitely do not need there. And that includes some people, situations, circumstances that you need to work on because that's the way these things use this stuff against you, you know. I have seen instances. Now, this is going to sound freaky here, okay? But I have
you know what? This show is all about freaky, so yes.
I have known instances where the demonic can take the image from your mind and use it against you like a weapon. It's true. They can do it. They can do it. And that's what makes it so insidiously dangerous when you deal with these things, you know. I've often said that the demonic is a wild card. You've got to play that wild card. It's the Joker in this deck that you got spread out on the table in front of you, whatever the situation is, especially when it comes to the paranormal and paranormal investigation of any type, whether it be cryptid, UFOlogy, whatever the situation was. I heard the other day where this guy was talking about underground. This is freaky. Think about, and it struck me. You hear something new every day. I love it when I hear something new. Okay, this guy says he was dealing with deep underground military bases, DUMBs, and said they were reptilians and all that down there, and that you had to sign. Listen to this now. You had to sign an agreement in order to go in to access these DUMBs. You had to sign an agreement stating that you would not mention the name of Jesus Christ while you were down there.
Wow.
Really?
That's really scary thought.
Think of the implications here. Think about the implications of that.
I mean, I can't imagine that.
I mean,
right? I don't know that I'm not signing that.
No.
Right? I mean,
but I mean, that what to tell you spiritually, there's something going on here. I have had many, and I've been, you know, I've had my own UFO experience, or UAPs as they want to call them nowadays.
Yeah,
these things are real; they do exist, but I think there's something else going on here. It's like John Keel said, okay, and I say this in my book too, The Road Unseen. These things are wearing a mask. And they're kind of laughing at us. They're playing a game on us, okay? They're wearing a mask. They're not what they appear to be, and we're being fooled a lot of times. And that's just being human, I guess, but we're still being fooled by this. If we knew what was really behind the mask, we might be astonished. We might have a completely different outlook on things, because I think a lot of this stuff, I'm not calling them tricksters, but they are very much like that. They're pulling the wool over us, okay? They're trying to fool us into believing the things that they want us to believe.
Yeah.
They're guiding us. It's guided imagery, sort of a thing, okay? And a lot of this may not appear to be what it truly is. They may look like aliens. Maybe they want you to think that. you know, or they have a celestial technology that is not really from, Alpha Centauri. Maybe it's someplace else that's a lot closer than that. There's some stuff going on in this world that we need to question, and we need to thoroughly investigate deeper and not take it for its face value.
Just, see, I think we manifest a lot of these things. I know a person that was so intent on talking to her passed away mother, so intent on this, okay? It's not one of my best friends, although they have similar experiences, but a person I know, it's a friend of the family that we've known for years, the entire family. This person was so intent, okay, on talking. It's a girl, her passed away mother. And she was, was raised, believed in God, all this and the other. And when her mother passed away, we all knew that this person was going to have a very difficult time. And listen, we all do. We all experience the grieving process. Some of us takes years to finally pull through it. I get all that. This woman was so intent on communicating with her mother that she went to the extremes to get in communication, utilized Ouija boards, went to seances, read all these books, started even delving into the occult and the dark magic, where eventually she talked to her mother all right, or so she thought it was her mother. And this person, I think to this day, this person is kind of, how shall I say, they should be in a straitjacket.
Yeah. But, I've actually talked to some psychics, and a lot of people involved in a lot of this weird New Age stuff that's going on. Believe me, I'm not going to get into that tonight, but it's some very freaky stuff. Well, let me say this. I talked to a psychic one time, and I said, how do you know this certain thing, And she said, oh, well, my spirit guide told me. I said, okay. Who is your spirit guide? She said, well, my spirit guide is my spirit guide, I said, well, who told you that? And she said, my spirit guide told me that. Okay. So I'm thinking,
again, yeah, okay.
You're taking this for what it's worth, okay? That could be anybody telling you that, and you're believing it, okay? I have had people come to me a lot of times say, look at the evidence here. This graph shows you this, shows you how much. I say, yeah, but where is the origin of this information? And I tell people a lot of times, and I've taught a lot of classes out in cemeteries, okay? And I used to teach this, okay? Look at the origin, where something is coming from, and where it's going, and what reason it's going there, okay? It's like following dark money. Where's that dark money coming from, and where's it going? What's it being spent for, okay?
Yeah.
You got to look at the origin of things, whatever it may be. And that's part of my criteria as an investigative researcher. Okay, if you or Krista come to me tonight and say Dennis's house is haunted, it's got so many spirits in it, or some demonic spirits, I said, how do you know that? I need to know the history of that house. Right. I need to know everything possible about that. Then I might know what I'm dealing with here. But you got to know. And I have seen so many times, Krista knows this, I'm sure, because she's involved in. You've seen a lot of people go into an investigation with absolutely no knowledge of what it was they're getting into. Don't do that. That's not a good idea, because that could be dangerous, okay? You need to know the history. Listen, to be a true paranormal investigator, where you're investigating cryptids, UFOs, I don't care, the whole thing. You know me, I'm about the whole pie, okay? To do any of that, you got to be different. You got to be an anthropologist. You got to be a criminologist. You got to be a psychiatrist. You got to be many different things. You got to wear different hats in order to do your job as best as you possibly can. Okay. And years ago when I started out, I had people coming to me saying, I need help. I need somebody to help me. I didn't, and I would go in with groups that were not social clubs. Okay, Krista knows this. You've seen them. A lot of them are nothing but social clubs. Oh, we went
Right.
out Saturday night. We all had some drinks and we got scared, and it was so
Right.
fun. That's not what it's about.
No.
Okay, that's not furthering knowledge. That's
No.
not. That's not helping anybody but themselves. It's very superficial to do that.
And you said, like people go out and have drinks. That's one thing you don't do when you investigate any type of the paranormal. You go sober.
Yeah. Well, I'm not against having fun. You can enjoy what you're doing. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you want to be interested in it, but it's your intention behind it, though. That's what counts. And these people are asking you for help. Now, I'm talking about, a certain situation. It could be, it's a different thing. It's a historical side. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing involved. But if people come up and ask you for help and you don't give them that help, what are you doing there?
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I had that happen to me when I first began. People say, I need an answer. I need to know what's going on, And I'll always say, well, if I don't know the answer, we'll find it together. But, I want to help you do that, But some people don't take it that way. Those people are not helping anybody. They're not really furthering any kind of a science or anything. They're not helping, okay?
Yeah.
They're only in it for the thrill. Well, if they want a thrill, why don't they go watch a movie or something? If that's what they want, that's what they ought to do. But they're not helping anybody. So don't come to me and call yourself a real paranormal investigator doing that kind of stuff, because I'll laugh at you. Okay, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
And Krista knows this well too. You've been in it long enough to you've run into that type before. Absolutely.
Yep. There's a lot of teams out there that are into it for not to help people. They're into it for themselves. And, they don't ever, they'll go into a home and they'll investigate it. But you know what, though, that homeowner will never hear from them again. And that's wrong. And that's
they're in it for fame and money too,
Yep.
I had somebody the other day offer me some money for something. I said, look, I don't charge you for that.
Yeah, we don't.
If it was about the money, I'm in the wrong profession here. Okay, I'm doing the wrong thing. It's not about that.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
But some people don't see it that way.
Nope.
And that's.
I was just going to say, Brandy and I, we travel all over the place. We use our own gas money. We don't take any payment. We don't take any money. We spend our own money in hotels and, just to help people. That's what it's about.
Oh, yeah. It comes out of your own pocket most of the time.
Absolutely, it does.
And I always find that so disappointing when I hear stories about people that truly are in peril with something happening in their home, and they get the wrong paranormal team, investigative team to contract.
I've actually seen people make situations worse by doing that. Oh yeah. They weren't helping anybody. They were making it worse. If you're not helping, you're part of the problem.
Yep.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And that's really part of all walks of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see it every day. Including these Olympics, which I'm not getting into because that's political.
I don't know. I'm just sitting here thinking, did I ever tell you about the incident of the love seat?
No, tell us.
I had a woman come to me one time, and she said, I'm having some weird paranormal stuff going on in my house. Doors are opening, faucets being turned on, the usual stuff, and cold spots and stuff. She said, and I've been living in this house 25 years. This has never happened before, so that's the bell goes off, well, what have you brought in your house recently, And she said, well, nothing. Well, I did buy this kind of love seat at a yard sale, a couple of weeks ago. And I said, was that about when everything started? She said, yeah, now that you mention it, that's probably when stuff kind of started. I said, well, go back to where you bought that love seat and find out if you can find some history on that, And so she called me about a week later and said, how did you know about that? And I said, well, I didn't know anything about it. What are you talking about? And she said, well, I found out about the love seat. A man committed suicide on it.
Oh, jeez.
I said, oh, well, that's not good. Why don't you need to find another love seat? Okay. You need to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
And when she did, everything stopped.
And that's why I think history is so important. You know, a lot of people say history is boring, this and that. Well, first of all, in high school, one of my favorite subjects was history. I loved history. And history is so important in the day-to-day events. It doesn't matter if you're in the paranormal, cryptids, or any walk of life. Every time I've looked at the history of something, it kind of gave an explanation as to what had happened. I tell the story about my brother and sister-in-law buying a house, and I was seeing a ghost of my niece. Well, guess what? We did an investigation. The house was built on a burial mound where an Indian reservation was massacred. I seen the ghosts at my bar, which looked like throwbacks from Prohibition, dressed in those suits. I did the investigation. My bar was originally built during Prohibition and it was a speakeasy. And so those are just two right off the top of my head, and I could think of a couple others slipping my mind, but history has a way of proving itself and maybe actually proving some of these experiences that we come across.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just thinking while you were telling that about what this woman told me one time. She was a little girl living in Florida, and she just her and her mother lived in this big house that they had. I don't know if they rented it or what. I think it was a rental house, but it was like a 2-story house, and it was in Florida, and it had the hurricane shutters on it. Every window has the shutters that would close to keep the window panes from getting busted out in the hurricanes. And she said that it was in a hot summer day, and said that house was haunted, and it had once been a speakeasy years and years before. And said that there was like a whale in the basement. And there was she said that basement smelled terrible whenever it rained. It had a horrible, dead, rotting smell to it. And I often wondered what was in that whale, definitely. But she said one day while she and her mother were hanging clothes on the line outside, she said, I remember the day well. She was just a little girl. She said her and her mother were hanging clothes and said that it was a hot day in summer, in Florida. And said all of a sudden, every window in that house slammed shut and the shutters closed on every window around that house by themselves like that. When you hear something like that, you know immediately, hey, there's got to be some very dark history attached to something like that, Now, I've had experience with other houses like that my own self, where things like that have happened in. It's very essential that you find out what that history is, because then you know whether there's been a murder there or a untimely death of some sort. Whatever the situation is pertaining to the history of that place, it's essential that you find out. That way you know what you're dealing with. But I have sent a lot of people and I've mentored a lot of groups over the years. I've had several groups of my own and helped other groups as well. I would always tell them it's a good idea to be very superficial in what you're doing. In other words, don't know too much about what the incident is. Go in there and find out. Don't predetermine yourself to believe something.
Yep.
And that's what you got to watch out for. Let it flow naturally, kind of a thing. Don't push it. And what you never see, and Krista knows this too, I'm sure. What you never see.
Krista knows a lot tonight. Boy, oh boy.
That you sit there waiting for something to happen. Okay. And when you walk into, I'm going to tell you this, and I've had this experience many, many times. This is something to bear in mind. When you walk into a house or a building or whatever the situation is, 9 times out of 10, if there is a spiritual presence there, it will get away from you. It will either go up or it'll go down. Most of the time, if there's a basement, it'll go down the basement. If it's an attic, it'll go up in the attic. But it will get away from you because you are the intruder into its environment. So I've had a lot of people, I've said all night long, nothing's happened. This place, there's nothing going on here. I said, well, let's go upstairs a while, or let's go in the basement. And every time that happens, you'll hit something. If it's an active place, you'll hit something because it's hiding there from you. And that's the funny thing about it. You would think we would be hiding from the ghosts, but they are hiding from us.
And the demonic hide too, because one of one case that we did, it was a demonic case, and actually we walked through the whole house. We had equipment, did our walkthroughs, nothing, absolutely nothing, feel nothing. Went outside, and behind the house was a shed, and we were kind of drawn over there, walked to the shed, and literally this force came out of the shed and knocked Kathy and myself down. And
a lot of the times, Krista, the demonic will not confront you face on. It come at you sideways, like a sidewinder, okay?
Like it did.
Or come up behind you. I've had them come up behind me. I'm going to say this. This is going to sound freaky to you, okay? And this is real. I'm not making this up. There have been several incidents, not just one or two, but several instances where I have actually got into a physical fight with spiritual beings.
Wow.
I have actually had them attack me physically. I have fought them back. I have felt their hands or claws or whatever you want to call them on me. I had one incident where I was attacked on a stairwell. And it was a 2-landing stair. In other words, you had some stairs, then you had a landing, and then you had another landing at the top, okay? And I was at the landing in the middle. And I had just walked down there, and I was by myself, and was upstairs in this, I'll tell you what it was. It was a distiller, okay? It was a brewery, okay? And it had more than spirits in the bottles there, okay? And I was coming down the stair, and I hit that second landing, and about the moment I did, something grabbed me from behind. I felt it. There was nothing there for me to see, but I felt it. It was just as real as if you would have grabbed me right now. I turned around and fought this thing to keep it from pushing me down those stairs. It would have killed me.
Wow.
Damn.
I've had that happen more than once. These things are not, although they're not, you cannot see them. They're just as very real as if you could. Just because you can't see them does not make them be there. And they can get very physical with you very quickly. But most of the time, it's not in your face. They come up your back or sideways at you. That's just especially the way the demonic works.
Absolutely. It's a scary thought. And Chris, I noticed you started a couple questions for Dennis because I know we're getting close to cutting it. What you got there for him? Anything worthwhile?
There's. I mean, all the questions are great, but
no, of course, I'm
just go in order, and we'll do what we have time for. Little Patty asked, Dennis, do you think a person can be a living vampire and not know they are?
That's a possibility. You could do that 2 different ways. You could have a vampire spirit. You could be possessed by a vampire spirit and maybe not know it. You could also have the attributes of a vampire, depending on what kind of lifestyle you're living. If you live that lifestyle, listen to this. If you live that lifestyle, you become that. Okay. It's very much like the Werewolves and the Berserkers. They would put the skins on and they became those animals. That's the way the vampire lifestyle can do you too, like we talked about earlier with the goth people becoming that. And there's so many different stages of it. And the deeper you get into it, the more it takes over you in that respect. You could be that without knowing it. If you're an energy vampire, as people like to call them, or psychic vampires, you may be that without knowing it, not realizing it. But I think deep down inside you would know it.
Yeah.
But just not want to realize it. Put it that way. You might not want to own up to it. but you might feel that. If you do think you have that, you need to start trying to combat that, because that is not good. That is being very much like what we talked about at the beginning of the show, mosquitoes and ticks and stuff like that. You do not want to be a parasite.
No, absolutely not. All right, next question. Amy asked, how should a haunted object be disposed of?
Okay, there are different ways to do that depending upon the object itself. You can use blessed salt or holy water to cleanse that item if necessary. If it is very, very badly compromised, such as like a Ouija board or cursed tarot cards or whatever the situation, if you can't really cleanse it, it can be put down. And most of the time, burning is good. But when it comes to Ouija boards, we always like to bury them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of like a funeral for them. You bury them, you salt them, you pray over them, you walk away from them, you leave them, and that's it. You never go back there again. You're sort of putting it to rest forever.
Mm-hmm.
In that respect.
I did a private case that had a haunted doll, and we did the same thing. We took the doll and we buried it out in the field. I know exactly. It's about 10 miles from me right now, but where nobody else can find it, or
Oh, yeah. Well, dolls can be done the same. You bury them like you would almost like people.
Yep.
In that respect. But it's a good idea that you never return to that location.
Right.
Because that you're breaking that bond, you're breaking that establishment of communication, and you don't want to restart it ever again under those circumstances. But now you deal with supernatural entities much different than objects. But that's another show for another one.
It's about the 6th time you said that, Dennis. That's why you always come on all the time, because I could have you on every week, but then it'd be like, well, I gotta bring some other people on the show.
He's got another question. One more question.
Yeah, go ahead, Krista. Yes.
Okay. Morgan says, Dr. Dennis, sir, have you found any connection with dogman, werewolf to cult activity or black goo?
Okay, well, the black goo is supposedly an offshoot of some of this stuff. It's kind of like ectoplasm. You remember the ectoplasm thing? It's kind of an offshoot of that. The black goo is also supposedly, and that's getting into opening another can of worms, but it's sort of also connected with what I call dark or rogue science. And I think a lot of these dogman entities may be connected in that way. They may be a part of a hybrid program type of thing going on. In that situation, you got that along with the possibility of witchcraft too. So you can go down many different avenues with this stuff.
Yeah.
It just depends on what the situation is that you run into, without a doubt.
Good answer.
Well, Dennis, it's almost been an hour 42 minutes. I don't know where the time goes, Krista, when we talked to Dennis.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this show.
I love this show immensely. I love all this. I think, Dennis, though, I think this is the first time you've been on the night show. I think I always have you during brunch. Or unless I'm wrong, Krista. You probably know better.
I think you're wrong, because I've been doing this show for a while now, and Dennis.
I'm wrong. Yeah. So you think he's been on the night before? Yeah,
I think so.
Well, the last show I think was during the afternoon. I was by myself because I typically do the afternoon. I do the afternoon show alone typically, but now I got text back, so that's good for a while.
Yeah.
But Dennis, it's always a pleasure having you on, and I know that we already have something slated, because I put out my favorite people in October together. And Dennis is going to be with us for Halloween in October. So, Krista, you got to get him on somewhere in between. Sorry, already got him.
There you go.
But yeah, so Dennis, always a great show with you. Your wealth of knowledge, like I say, man.
Yes.
Halloween's my favorite season, by the way, definitely.
Oh yeah. Freaky Geek says he always comes back like a bad penny, only he's better. Yes, Freaky Geek. Freaky Geek has been with me since I started this show, and just says all the greatest comments. Thanks,
Freaky Geek is awesome.
Yeah, and
always
and
have a good time.
Yeah, thanks. I always have a great time with you. I always look forward to these. In fact, I woke up this morning. Oh, I got Dennis on. And I got up at like 7 in the morning. I said, man, I got to wait 14 hours to talk to Dennis. Come on, man. Life's not fair. Life's not fair, I said to myself.
Right.
But as today's show went on, we know that life is certainly fair for us. We're fortunate compared to all these things that happen to these people. And today was a great show to kind of encompass all that, you know.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
And Dennis is with Hunting the Shadows. And that is your number one, your main YouTube channel, correct, Dennis? Hunting the Shadows?
Yeah, that's Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel. And if you go to there, you will see the links to the other shows and all that. I also have a website. That's DennisWCarroll.com. And if anybody wants to contact me, I can be reached at DennisWCarroll@gmail.com.
Awesome.
That's pretty easy. And of course, one more time before we go, I want to thank T-Bone for the super chat, Walter Kabinski for the super sticker, Denise for the super sticker. Thanks for the support and love. That's awesome for you guys. So I do appreciate that. And tonight, of course, is Tuesday night. I'll be back Thursday afternoon at 1 with Tex. And then Krista, you and Brandy are on Thursday at 9 in the East?
Nope, not me and Brandy. Brandy has to do something with her daughter. It's me and you, remember?
Well, how
Don't
fast I already forgot. It's me and Krista Thursday night. Okay.
It is. And we have Chris Kramer is going to come on, and he went to Alaska and Oregon, and he's going to come on and talk about his Bigfoot excursions.
Ooh, awesome. Yeah. Now, okay, great. I'm glad. That's why you called me. Yeah, talk about that one. No,
yeah.
I know. Look, you told me about 3 hours ago. See my brain already? Boom. Mark Zammer, thank you for closing out with awesome super chat.
Thank you.
Mark's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Everybody subscribe to Mr. Dennis, Dr. Dennis Carroll.
For sure.
And his books are all found on Amazon, correct, Dennis?
Yep, that's correct. Yes, sir.
I will have all the links are in the show for Dennis, so check it out. Subscribe to him, buy his books, do whatever you need to do. Watch his show. He's got a relative of Mr. Bram Stoker on. And what day is that again, Dennis?
That's tomorrow night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time.
Wednesday. Nothing that I know is going on that I'm, like. So good. Wednesday, 9 o'clock. Hunting the Shadows. I'll be there for sure.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Sounds right. We'll see you then.
Thank you, Sweet Pea. Real quick.
Thank you, Sweet Pea. Well, thank you for the later super chats. I love all you guys. I appreciate that.
Yep.
That is totally awesome. Donations are not expected, but very much appreciated. You guys rock. Dennis Carroll rocks. Krista rocks. She's my best co-host. She's the best co-host on YouTube. With that being said, we're out.
See ya.